Sure.
Okay, go around the room
For the viewers.
for the viewers.
Todd Furkey, City Alderman.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Tom Realm, Alderman.
Tim Sorcy, Finance Director.
Mayor Zach Fruink.
Greg Hepp, Alderman.
Scott Keller, Alderman.
Joe Zerfel, Alderperson.
Terry Dolan, Alderperson.
And Paul Shabilsky, City Clerk.
Agenda item number 2, consider for approval revisions to the grant management policy.
I sent that out to Monday, I believe. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review it, but it's just kind of adding some cleanup language. But the major, I guess, changes to the policy is for the purchasing of supplies and services and public construction, just kind of changing the parameters to match more of what the federal guidelines are. And basically, 2 years ago, the federal government handed down new guidance on the administration of federal grants and things like that. And so they're taking a little more strict look at these and provided guidance, and they're really focusing on, because if we exceed $750,000 in federal funding, we're subject to a single audit. That's where our auditors come in. They select the major federal programs and they do an audit based on federal guidelines. And any findings, the federal government is taking very seriously that if a grant recipient has findings, they must have corrective action. They must have a policy that guides the administration of grants so that we have internal controls ensuring that federal monies are spent for their intended purpose. If you continue to have findings year after year, it could jeopardize future federal grant funds. So basically this policy kind of governs that. And the purchasing authorization procurement in the federal government, the new grid kind of mirrors what the federal government is doing. There's not a lot of change, just changes some of the parameters. One of the things is the department head has approval of invoices up to $25,000, where before that they only had approval up to $10,000. One of the reasons for that is that the first step in the grant process here as part of our policy is that they have to get approval for the grant. So we're already looking at what the grant is, what they're going to be spending on, and we're already approving that. So thus we're kind of approving the expenditures that go with it. Anything over $25,000 up to $150,000, the mayor or myself can approve those based on the grant guidelines. And obviously any contracts that come through that are part of a public construction or purchase that's approved by the council, department head would have authority to approve those because the council's already approved the actual amount of the contract. So it's just kind of reworking some of that. The second part of it is just adding some language in there in what our public construction bid process is, so that if we have federal guidelines that are subject to public bid, that the auditors can look and say, okay, this is your procedure for approving that. Because one of the things they look at is that, are you following your policy and what's in here? So it's very important that when a department gets a federal grant, that they're following this policy, making sure they're doing everything in what this policy states. And then the other is the procurement of professional services, because that's not always the lowest bid. It's a value.
Right.
Just
Value-based selection.
value-based selection. So we put verbiage into there that Joe helped me with that shows what our selection process is for those professional services. So basically, that's basically the gist of the changes to the policy.
I'll make a motion to approve the revisions to the grant management policy. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the revisions to the grant management policy. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, discuss updates on Winterfield Aquatic Center project schedule, proposed budget and financing.
Okay. Well, good evening. The last time we had some discussion on this was at the end of last year, and thought it would be a good time, given that we're now into the new year, but also have some updates to share, to put this item back on the agenda for the purpose of council discussion, and then obviously for the viewing public to get up to speed as to what the updates and things that have materialized on the project. So basic agenda for us to walk through on this is the design consultant work, a bit on schedule, budget estimates and financing, and then have some discussion or questions, answer any questions you may have at the end. the design concept master plan remains largely unchanged. Going through the process since we engaged MSA and Water Technology, we really solidified this in the middle of summer last year. And so at this point, just a few exceptions I would note that are shown on the graphic either that you have in front of you or on the screen is the concessions courtyard was slightly reduced. The water feature on the left-hand side on the outfield fence of Witter Field, some of those things were tweaked a little bit and moved slightly. The winter time use, the winter use that would primarily be skating, has been given further consideration, and it's been kind of the general consensus at this point that the drop-off skating, the drop-off area which is used in the summertime, that we would plan to use for flood for skating wintertime use may not be in the form of a kind of a traditional roundabout where you've got curb and things, but it'd be maybe a single single grade of pavement, so you could flood the whole circle and allow that area for skating, as opposed to potentially trying to accommodate grades within the parking lot, which still could possibly be done, but it would just require some more time and effort to accomplish that. So I just wanted to make a note on the wintertime use. And then obviously the final comment I'll make on that is the vision still remains to make this facility as much of a year-round facility as possible. Given that the bathhouse, the north corner, so the part that's dubbed concession, which is concession / multi-purpose, that left half of the building is for year-round use, that it'll be designed and constructed to accommodate events and uses year-round. And obviously to support the wintertime skating with the warming emissions area in the middle of the building. Any comments or questions on the scope? I just want to make sure that putting it out there, that the overall master plan hasn't really changed much. It looks a little bit different as they're getting further into design, just in terms of how it looks on paper, but there really isn't any change to it. So really the purpose of the core point of tonight is to point out that the project limits and the alternate bid as it's being created through the construction document update is that we've asked MSA to come back to us and say, and to really separate what are the core components to the project. If we were to build in multiple phases or separate portions of it, give us a sense of what that plan looks like. So we have an idea, one, from a budgetary standpoint, and two, what it's going to look like on paper, so we can agree what's the core features and maybe what are the phase 2 or alternate components. So as you see, either on the handout that you have or on the screen, the areas, it's essentially divided between the purple and the red. So the areas between the purple and the red, where that red runs through the park or the facility, those would be considered phase 2 or alternate bid items. So we'd have the ability or flexibility if we wanted to do them all in phase 1 if well, let's say bids came in very attractively and we were able to afford to do them up front, or if we wanted to do them at a later point. So in effect, it's the bathhouse, aquatics features, parking and entranceway, and the stormwater management features that are really incorporated within that core phase 1. Bid alternate or phase 2, however you want to look at that, would be the tennis courts, the secondary parking in the northwest corner, outside the Witter Field fence, the playground, and the shelter. There's an open air shelter that's excluded from the core, and then the park amenities. Am I forgetting anything, Joe, at this point? So then in terms of the final design update, obviously we just talked about the project limits and the separation between the first core components and the alternate components. We really wanted to put in front of you where it stands from a bid document preparation. It's, as you can see, the schedule is pretty straightforward. They're a little less than 45% of the way through the preparation of bid documents. Those would be the formal construction docs that would be published for construction. We expect to be 85% on March 6th, and then 100% by March 30th, and that would be the full bid doc package as it is proposed in the concept design. And in italics up there is a step in the process or in the schedule, and that is the release of the advertisement for bidding, which is proposed as March 12th. So obviously that's assuming we agree to the sequence proposed in the schedule that I emailed last Friday, with the more expanded schedule with the bidding and award and then the construction phases. And that's assuming, of course, we want to stick with the 2018 construction versus a winter, versus the winter construction, or even kicking it into 2019 summer, and then a 2019 summer opener. So I guess backing up a bit, the controlling date or decision we set, and I sent that in the email schedule. I don't have paper copies tonight, but I can get you one in your mailbox if you'd like one. Has been set for March 1st, and that would give us the decision point of whether or not we're going to release the advertisement for bidding on or around March 12th or something, and then the sequence of events to follow. So that's really the March 1st date is what we're kind of establishing as kind of that drop dead point if we're going to maintain the schedule as we're proposing in the sequence that MSA has put in front of us. Obviously, that would also coincide with a check-in to see where we're at with our fundraising, and if we've reached a milestone or a point at which we feel comfortable proceeding and publishing bid documents for bidders to submit responses to. So we can come back to schedule in just a second, but I wanted to refocus or share an update really on the budget estimates. So while we've asked them to come up with kind of the core and then the alternate, the primary core elements that they came back with from a budgetary standpoint is between 9 and 10 million. And I share a range because we could expect bid documents to come back any percent under what their opinions are, but their opinions are closer to the 10 million. It could be as as low as the low $9 million. And then the scope or phase 2 components are still estimated to be around that $2 million price tag. So that's really where it stands from a budgetary standpoint. I think there's been some concern or question of what the project cost is. I just wanted to make sure we put this back in front of ourselves, but also to the public, that this is the price of the facility, at least as it's proposed in the concept, and that's what we're designing. On financing, with the city's $5 million or $5.5 million commitment, however you want to look at it, we're effectively 51.5% of the primary scope, so just over half. But that leaves us with a gap of $5 million that we hope to receive commitments, pledges, or actual outright gifts by a March 1st deadline to maintain the schedule that we have. So I guess with all that said, for all intents and purposes, we'll have a shovel-ready project come March 1st. If the philanthropic, public-private support for the facility comes in between really now and the next 60 days, I think by March 1st, I think we'd probably safely say we're going to move forward, right? But the question remains, what will that look like on March 1st, and will we make tweaks to the schedule? We didn't ask MSA to come back with a schedule that has wintertime construction in it with a pressing into a 2009 opener. That could be, I guess, an alternate to the schedule that's being proposed. But at this point, the schedule, as you saw in the email on Friday, shows that we publish the docs, open bids in April, begin construction over the course of the summer, and substantially complete by the end of the calendar year this year, and then open the facility potentially as soon as June of 2019 for the 2019 season. So in terms of fundraising, I'm happy to have probably one-on-one discussions with you all on that, but I wanted to put it out there that this is kind of where we stand as at present. So any questions related to schedule or the budget they proposed? Anything I may have shared? We did do an end of year tax bill insert, so we did have, I don't have an exact number of gifts, but I know there were $100 donations to smaller and larger, some $1,000 gifts that came in around the end of the year at the counter with tax payments, and a number of folks came and dropped keep me interested or keep me updated. I'm interested in hearing updates on the project, so I think it shows that the attention and excitement is still there, which is great. I think it validates the whole premise of the project and what we're hoping to achieve. Questions? Am I missing anything from any of the internal discussion? Todd's good.
So doing it in 2 phases, what was the financial hit as far as, it's not gonna be the same dollars, right? So, I mean, to do it in 2 phases, did they give you a percentage as far as what the cost increase would be?
I'll ask Joe. There wasn't really any deep discussion on that.
No.
Knowing that there would be some lost synergies and things because of the mobilization cost and just cost of doing business changes. But
And I think the cost would be fairly minimal. The second phase work is significantly different than the first phase work. The tennis courts, the playground equipment. I'm not sure that you'd have the same contractor doing that work. And so I would anticipate that the mobilization fee would be similar if it's segregated versus included, because it'd be different contractors doing that work. There might be some economies of scale loss, but I don't think it would be a significant price change, as long as your general costs for, the economic conditions didn't change. But we did want to really be able to take a look at what is really required to make the aquatics portion of the project work versus accomplish the entire master plan, and have that flexibility that if we aren't successful in fundraising the entire amount right away, that we can get the aquatics facility built and enjoyed by the public, and then continue to solicit donations and make plans for the remaining portions of the project.
One more question for follow-up. So a possible wintertime construction, I know with construction of some of our commercial enterprises that I've been involved with, the costs were a little bit more. But now is there kind of an off-season for some of these contractors where they're not that involved with the different aquatics around the state, where it might be even a savings of late fall or wintertime construction?
it's a really good question for Water Technology. That's the aquatics consultant on it. The herb facility in Appleton was, if I recall, was constructed over
Yes.
the winter, and they really pressed into an aggressive schedule with that and actually maintained it and actually opened it, I think, on time, if not maybe even a bit early. But I think, I do recall, though, that they said that their opinions were, their bids came in lower than their estimated cost. So, and that was with the winter construction. I don't know if that's an anomaly there, or if there was some accelerated where they did the pool vessels, in the fall, or I'm not sure exactly what that schedule looked like, but that's a good question back for them, I think. So as a kind of a sub-alternative, I think we should ask that question, especially if we agree to extend fundraising over the course of the summer, or if frankly we're not going to get answers from some of the large gifts. If we know we're not going to get answers, then we just agree to that alternative, maybe.
From the discussions that we've had, in the building trades, there does tend to be a little bit of a lesser amounts of construction in the wintertime, and so some of your unit costs are slightly less for, because of competition, or desire to get those projects when otherwise maybe they're a little slow. But then you do have additional costs for heating and things like that. So it's not, I was surprised in the general analysis that Water Tech and MSA provided. I was surprised to see with the herb pool project as an example that the winter costs weren't more than what they were. Offhand, I couldn't give you a percentage. It is slightly more. I don't know that it would be more to the extent that if we had the opportunity that we wouldn't proceed, especially if it allowed for a June opening. Logistically, it would be challenging to open the pool much later than a typical pool opening day, just for the obtaining staff. And so, we want to be cognizant of that. If fundraising or other conditions require us to start the construction a little bit later, I do think we want to seriously consider winter work if we can get it done, so that we're opening in June.
So, like you're saying, the opening date wouldn't necessarily change, just maybe the shovel on
Cost-
ground date might
Might
change
change.
because of basically the fundraising.
Exactly. And I guess I would just make a final point related to the capital campaign committee. The city still remains, very interested in hearing from community members that want to be a part of a committee. It's not a city project per se, but a community project, and I think the more members of our community that are actively involved in fundraising that can help connect with donors or give donor presentations or even work behind the scenes. There's a lot of people in this community that have worked on big capital campaigns before, and there's a number of them going on right now, obviously. So the extent that we can tap some folks that might help us get closer to the finish line in a faster fashion would be a good thing. So have them contact me or the office, or I guess even just the clerk's office too, I think would be appropriate. That's all I have.
Okay, agenda item number 4, beverage operator license applications.
I'll make a motion to approve beverage operator license applications as presented. Second that?
Motion and a second to approve the licenses. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, audit of the bills for December 2017. I'll make a motion to approve check numbers 70362 through 70613 and manual checks 99510 through 99526.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the bills. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, set next meeting date.
Second Tuesday is February 13th.
Does that still work good for you, Tim?
I mean, I like the second Tuesday.
Okay.
It works out well. I'm just to say, I know on the 13th, I noticed on the calendar at 5:30 there's brushes by night in here, so we could have it in the third floor conference room if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
You'll excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, you can't make it 13th? Should we do the 6th?
Chamber has their business expo on the 13th, not that that matters. It's
6.
either one works for me.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah, we'll do the 6th just because
Okay.
Terry can't make it. Agenda item number 7, in open session, the committee will vote to go into closed session under section 19.85, parent 1, parent E of the Wisconsin statutes, which reads, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Sub A, in closed session, the committee will discuss negotiations and strategy regarding a development agreement with the Southwood County YMCA. Sub B, the committee may return to open session and take action or make recommendations regarding a development agreement with the Southwood County YMCA, or may adjourn in closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session. Second that?
Motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.